Brought to you by Ayoko, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. Welcome back. Well, 17 years later, the long call between Vodacom and Nkosana Makate has finally come to an end. The please call me dispute, once a legal buzz has now been settled out of court, the exact settlement amount remains undisclosed. Business Days, Mudiwa Gavaza joins us to unpack the settlement and dissect the financial ripple effects for Vodacom. Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time off air. We were discussing how old we were when this court case actually started, and I did the maths in my head, and I was 13 years old in 2008. Wow, this reveals my age, but you know, that's not part of the conversation. Maybe let's start by you just taking us through some of the key moments that have taken place over the past 17, 18 years, and what continually made this story one of public interest.
So obviously you have this Please Call Me feature that came about, and I was reading, you know, the other day when this feature actually came out. We often talk about the acknowledgement that the company made to the fact that he invented this thing. And there's actually a lot of historical, you know, record of the fact that at the time the MD, Andrew Mtembu, actually acknowledged, you know, Nkosana Makate as being an innovator, the fact that he wasn't even in a product team, that he was part of the finance team, and all of this stuff. So at the time, he was acknowledged, you know, as having invented this thing. They made it free initially, and then from there, they started off at making it 15 cents every time, you know, someone sent out, you know, one of these things. If people are curious about when Makate says Vodacom made billions from this thing, that's where it comes from, you know, to say that there was a small transaction fee that was attached every time a person sent out a please call me. There was a small transaction fee that was attached to those things.
On the consumer, on the customer?
Yes.
Oh, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a free service.
No. So, and like I said, I was reading something where in the initial, they made it free, and then from there, they were now charging, you know, 15 cents every time someone sent a please call me, right? It's a network service, right? So
gotta make money somewhere.
So you gotta make your money somewhere. We go through this case, they make the acknowledgement, but the issue is just about, you know, how much is actually going to be paid. This is something that actually began before the current management, you know, came in. At the time, it was under a different, you know, different management, and then over time, Shamil Yusuf has, you know, taken this on, and he was going to make the determination based on what the court was saying. He came up with some numbers, they were rejected, and it's been that back and forth, you know, ever since. So now they've settled behind court, and we've done some calculations about how much that, you know, particular number could be. The calculation is based on the fact that last week we had a trading statement that came out from Vodacom. They are releasing their interim results to September, this coming Monday. So in a few days' time, we'll know anyway, right, how much the exact number is. And at the time, they said that they expected their earnings per share to actually rise by 40 to 50%, which was going to be a range of 496 cents to 513 cents, which is basically 4.96 to 5.13, you know, right? That was the range that they had given. Then yesterday, actually, let's talk about Wednesday. On Wednesday, we get the news that they have settled. In that announcement, they say that they're going to, that this has been accounted for as a one-off. That's Wednesday. Okay. In their interims, they say that this is going to be noted. Then a day later, which is yesterday, they issue an updated trading statement saying that now they expect that the increase is going to be 30 to 40% instead of the 40 to 45%. So still a very good print, you know, when it comes to earnings growth. And the range has now gone to 4.60 to 4.96 as opposed to the 4.96 to 5.13. What you then do is that you then just do a quick multiplication. There are about just under 2.1 billion shares of Vodacom stock that are there. So you take the variance, which is 17 cents on the high end, 36 cents on the low end, and from there you see it works out that the cut that's been made in the earnings is 353 million to 748 million. That's the range.
So up to 700.
Up to 748. The midpoint, which is what some people are thinking, this sits at, is 550 million, right? That's the midpoint of that range. So we wait to see where in that range that the actual settlement happened. But because they're saying it's a one-off, and there's only one one-off that we are talking about, it more or less has to be the settlement.
I wonder why the delayed approach when it comes to making these announcements. Was it maybe concern that there might be some volatility in the share price? Also, 748 million rands to Vodacom seems like a drop in the ocean for me.
It's still a big amount of money to pay, especially if you're paying an individual. But you'd also need to, break it down by the fact that this has been an almost 2-decade legal battle that you have to think about. 748 million, if you take the top end of that range, it's still a lot of money. However, the question now becomes, based on some of the previous calculations that had been there, it would have seen the compensation going to a minimum of 29 billion rand, right, based on one of the judgments that came out. So even if it is 750 million rand, it's a lot of money, but in the world of Vodacom, it's probably not that much money. That's the first thing. Second thing is the fact that even with this one-off, Vodacom will still be able to report a very healthy increase in its earnings per share. And its headline earnings are also going up by about the same amount. The impact has been more or less the same on both those fronts. So they'll still be able, to say we reported a 40% increase, rather a 30% increase in earnings at the minimum. So it's still a good set of results, for Vodacom. And you can also see in the share price performance as well that, it hasn't tanked or anything like that. So the market isn't really too perturbed, by this. Had it been 29 billion,
that's where we were going to see some rattling in the share price.
Yeah.
Just quickly before I let you go, Mudiwa, what message does this outcome send to corporate SA particular when it comes to innovation and ownership, as well as how companies handle employee ideas moving forward?
I do know that ever since this case really started being part of the corporate conversation in South Africa, because once again, we're talking 17, 18 years that this has been at play. A lot of companies have tightened up their contracts and made sure that ideas that you're coming up with within the line of your work, they're attributed to the company. Standard practice, around the world. In certain cases, they do have incentive structures, awards, bonuses, that type of thing. If you do come up with something, it depends. But for the most part, that intellectual property sits and rests, with the company. And I do believe that even, before all of this happened, the real issue in this case is the fact that someone said to Nkosana Makate, great idea, we're going to give you something for this. Yeah, so going forward, it is sort of an interesting case study. People have, shored up their contracts. Going forward, it may give some inspiration, to people that maybe have been struggling, with long-running cases of their own, against, large corporates, to say, as an individual, it is possible, to get something, out of this. Now, based on the amount and based on how much Makate is actually going to stay with versus how much needs to go to legal costs, taxes, and all that, that will really determine whether or not this was a win after all, after the 17 years.
I've been saying to my friends and colleagues that I wish I was, part of Nkosana's family just to benefit, even if it's just 10K, 15K. Trust me, I wouldn't even come to work. I'd be like, I'm good, thanks, bye.
Yeah.
Mudiwa, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights with us this afternoon. That was Business Days, Mudiwa Gavaza, with this week's edition of Tech Talk.
Brought to you by Ayoko, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.